Lawyers of Reddit. What is the dirtiest trick you have had to use in court to win a case, and how did it feel to use it? Story 1. The Trooper Alliance Trick. I traveled a decent ways to a court out of my local area. The clerks, the prosecutor, and the judge were all jerks. It became clear that they were going to punish my client for hiring a non-local attorney. The state trooper was running late because of working an accident. I went and hung out with the troopers already there. We talked about local college sports and other things in common. One of them eventually asked about my case. They decided to call my officer to discuss my case, then put me on the phone with him. We worked out a pretty good plea deal. When he got to court, the judge threw the book at my client. The officer waited for me in the parking lot to tell me to appeal. He said there was no way he would show up for the next trial. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and I go out of my way to take care of state troopers. Story 2. The Dramatic Contempt Performance. I was in a neighboring district. Another attorney I had dealt with before was there for a driving while under the influence. He comes from a minority family with heavy family connections in the legal community. A church bus rolls up with a huge group from the accused's church. They fill the back rows of the court. This lawyer takes it to trial. His defense misses lots of good points I would have raised. His themes were about the system being unfair and about racial bias. The back rows are very vocal. Amen. The judge finds the guy guilty. After it is over, the lawyer approaches the bench and tells the judge how bad today has been, loud enough for the back rows to hear. Then he paces agitated between the rows of the audience, mumbling. The judge obviously is confused and used to good relations with this attorney. He calls him back to the bench. The attorney paced and mumbled as the judge keeps asking him back. The attorney finally says loudly that he will not be a party to this injustice. The judge pleads with him, saying he will have no choice but to charge him with contempt. That church congregation was shouting out to God and Jesus when a dozen officers took that attorney down and hauled him off to jail. I've never seen anything like it. That attorney was elected district attorney a few months later, beating a 20-plus year incumbent. Story 3. The High School Pressure Tactic. While this was a dirty trick, it led to a good result. I represented a man in his 40s for transporting methamphetamine for sale. When the police officer pulled him over, he panicked and blurted out everything. He said he picked up methamphetamine from person A and delivered it to person B. He just wanted to make a little bit of money because he wasn't getting much overtime at work. He had no prior criminal history. He pleaded guilty with a range from 1 to 4.5 years in prison. I knew judges would give him some credit for no prior history and a lot of cooperation. But I had a small county judge who loved to hang people high if it involved substances. I was pretty sure the judge was going to aggravate his sentence, which means give him more than the middle amount, the presumptive. I didn't see my opportunity until 15 minutes before it was time for sentencing. It turns out that a local high school government class of seniors was there that day to observe how courts work. The prosecutor went first and lectured on substances and the people who are part of distributing to addicts. Then I started out something like, "Your Honor, a big concern of most of my clients is whether they are getting credit for cooperation." I then highlighted his cooperation and that the judge could give him credit by giving him less than the presumptive amount. I must have repeated the same logic 3 times, just to make sure that the judge knew that all of those high schoolers heard it, and were now waiting on her to see if she was going to give credit for cooperation. They all turned to her in silence. She paused for 30 seconds while giving me the evil eye because I put her in a bad spot. She basically had to give my client less than the presumptive, because otherwise she was telling 17-year-olds that cooperation doesn't count. The dumb luck timing of having those high schoolers there probably saved the client a year in prison. He got less than the presumptive. In the end, I got my way, and he got what was probably standard with those facts with an average judge. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 4. The Expired Offer Emergency Hearing. My ex-husband threw me out of my own house and threatened to harm me. I ended up in a woman's shelter and he stayed in the house. He was supposed to do some basic repairs to the house to make it marketable, but did almost nothing, which is why we had no offers for almost a year. Then one day we get the strangest offer. A lowball offer, only good for 8 hours. I called my realtor and she said that they had been making lowball offers all over town, trying to find someone desperate enough to sell, without verifying financing, income, or any of the issues needed before accepting an offer. I turned it down, but my husband was the first idiot to say yes. A few days later, I get a call from my lawyer. My husband's lawyer had gotten an emergency hearing on the house, claiming it was necessary due to time constraints of the purchase offer. But the offer had expired after the 8 hours, several days before. My lawyer had to appear over phone and I was never even notified of the hearing. The judge ordered the house sold without my consent at a much lower price than we could have gotten for it. Still makes me furious today. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 5. The Secret Filing and Failed Service. We were working on an amicable dissolution. Then for some reason, my ex and her attorney filed for divorce with several accusations of abuse. That never happened. They failed to serve me, failed to say anything, kept it a secret until 4 days before the pre-trial hearing. They would have received a summary judgment for 90% of my take-home pay if I failed to show. By some twisted luck, a wheel literally fell off my car. Since I had to buy a new vehicle, it would have changed all the dissolution paperwork. I tried for days to reach the attorney. Finally, with only 2 days before the hearing, her attorney admitted that they filed and I should seek my own legal counsel. The magistrate was not pleased and forced them to complete service. We offered to waive service and open negotiations. My ex and her attorney declined. They failed again the next week. They handed me paperwork but not actual service. So the magistrate made them do it again. All hearings were on Tuesdays, which I had off anyway. My ex had to take unpaid days off every time. By the third hearing, they still had not actually completed service, but they were ready to start negotiations if we waived the service requirement. There was a ton more shady stuff. My ex would offer bad deals and decline and changes we requested. We finally came to an agreement. Then they rescinded their offer. My ex then approached me personally in the recovery room after my son's surgery. I told her that they weren't bargaining in good faith, and I planned to take it to trial. My ex realized this would force the sale of the house. She turned pale, as at the time there was no way she would afford a similar home. Her attorney threatened to force the sale of my firearms. I told my attorney I didn't care. I was so frustrated that I was willing to sell everything, split the money earned, and walk away. Apparently they knew I was serious. Suddenly everything went very smooth. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 6. The Absurd Accusation Questions. My attorney just lets my ex screw up. That's easy. His attorney played some dirty tricks. For example, asking me questions in front of the judge that were completely absurd lies, to make it look like maybe I'm lying. For example, question: in how many days a week do you use substances? Answer: I've never used substances. Question: okay, how many times have you punched my ex in the face? Answer: never. Question: huh. Alright, well, can you confirm how much money you illegally embezzled from work? Answer: none, and on and on. I don't know if the judge saw through that game or suspects that maybe I am guilty of some of that. It's all complete lies. He was the abuser. Time will tell. But it was pretty upsetting to be asked those questions. Feels like an attack on your character. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 7. The IP Rights Sneak Attempt. I got sucked into a dispute with a former employer once over intellectual property, IP rights, in an employment agreement. They kept trying to sneak in a clause into the agreement, in every other paragraph, that gave them ownership of, full rights and responsibilities for, and access to anything I did remotely related to programming or computers outside of work while not on the clock. It was so broad, even my non-lawyer behind knew it was an awful thing. It became a deadlock argument back and forth, until I asked if they were accepting liability for any illegal activities I could perform outside of work. Suffice to say, those clauses disappeared by close of business the next day in the agreement. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 8. The Gold Digger Bribe Threat. A law firm in which I worked helped out with a probate. The father, deceased, had 2 adult children who had testified that, yes, the most recent will had not included the half-his-age girlfriend of the past month. The attorney for the gold digger sent a letter to the children which said, in essence, if you reconsider your testimony, I'll fly you out, pay for your stay, and pay you $7,000 to change your testimony. The first person to reconsider gets double, but only the first. If you don't change your testimony, I will come after you with every resource an attorney has to make your life miserable. It's the sleaziest thing I've ever seen. Plus, it put the firm in a tough position. Report him to the bar while the case was still ongoing? It would look like you were trying to influence the case. Report him after, and it looks like you're being petty and vengeful. Edit. People are asking what ended up happening. The kids changed their testimony, though it's not clear they actually got money for it or not. I'm thinking they did. So the gold digger got the money, instead of the charity it had originally been meant to go to. The attorneys in the office where I worked called the sleazebag and asked what's up with this letter. He immediately sent out a second letter which said, I did not mean to indicate I would pay for your testimony, nor did I threaten. It's your fault if you thought I said those things. Both letters were sent to the Bar Association, and I don't know if anything has happened since. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 9. The Contract Alteration Trick. I once sent a contract to an adverse counsel for their client's signature. We had negotiated the final contract. This guy was a real sleazeball. He changed the contract to include a favorable provision for his client, had his client sign, and then sent it back to us for countersignature. I don't remember how we caught it, but that is borderline malpractice right there. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 10. The Image Rights Page Removal. I'm not a lawyer, but an employment contract I was asked to sign had many pages and many places to sign. A couple of them had to do with giving the company I was applying to rights to my image and likeness. I just carefully removed those pages and returned the rest. I don't think they noticed. And I was hired. Another company that I applied to sold tobacco and tobacco products, and they wanted the right to take out a life insurance policy on me naming themselves as beneficiary. I walked away from that one. Story 11. The Nuclear Option Negotiation Pressure. I had an outstanding legal team. Negotiations had been rough. We were down to arguing over $30 a month, and I was sick of it. I woke up one morning utterly furious and emailed my attorney to invoke the, quote, nuclear option. His attorney had been talking about quitting for months. He called my ex, my delusional client, and the worst client ever. His attorney had also been ranting with mine, sometimes oversharing. Mine assured me that he was a good listener and only billed for a fraction of those talks. He kept meticulous notes. So my attorney emailed my ex's attorney that they had 24 hours to sign, or we'd end negotiations and book a trial date. When his attorney called my then husband, he added that he'd quit if my husband didn't sign. There was another firm that did a lot of family law. On the other side of the courthouse, he'd take the files to himself, supposedly. That attorney also told mine that even if his client signed, he'd quit after the judge signed off. My ex signed, and then was an utter pain in closeout. His attorney apparently decided to stay in the game, but ghosted his client a lot. They finished their part of closeout. His attorney died of a COVID-19 infection in 2020. We were never notified, and it seemed like my ex never retained another attorney. I wouldn't have known if a friend hadn't emailed me the obituary that ran in a local paper. My ex then played attorney for a few months, and then he got a COVID-19 infection and dropped out of sight for quite a while. My attorney and I closed the file because everything had gone through. The attorney did warn me about 3 issues that might come up and gave me scripts to use in email if they did. Or, shoot me an email and I'll gun up. One of those issues did come up, and I handled it on my own exactly as my attorney said. I haven't needed my attorney since. Story 12. The Custody Evaluation and Alimony Surprise. My attorney let me pay to have a custody evaluation done. Then, right before we went to court, my attorney mentioned the judge is going to do 50-50 custody. Why couldn't that have been mentioned beforehand? My ex lost their 6-figure job, they got fired. They then immediately filed to get alimony stopped. My attorney waited until after I paid my retainer, and the day of our court hearing mentioned the judge would probably give my ex some time to get a new job, and I should be okay with suspending alimony. Couldn't have mentioned that when I paid you for an hour of your time to go over our case. Story 13. The Procrastination Reminder Tactic. My lawyer hurried negotiations along by reminding my ex's lawyer that he procrastinates and loses paperwork. Went from, maybe we have to prep for trial, to the judge has granted your divorce in under an hour. After months of out-of-court negotiation, my ex didn't have additional objections or requests. He just wanted to take more time. Story 14. The Custody Bluff with Strong-Arm Terms. A young woman seeks divorce from a young man because he enjoys the, quote, thug life. He had recently been arrested and charged for possession with intent to distribute methamphetamine, a felony, and in possession of a firearm, unlawful carry. The young man doesn't like her leaving him. He hires a local big-name top divorce attorney, granted, a very rural area. Gets a temporary divorce order entered, saying she cannot have overnight guests of the opposite sex, common in rural conservative areas. Think it's mostly a thing of the past in more urban places. The young man is very upset about this, has his fancy lawyer ask for a hearing accusing her of violating court order and seeking full custody, on top of attorney fees. The young woman, on advice from a mutual friend, hires me for this hearing. I sit down with opposing counsel, and she basically tries to strong-arm me with her experience and lays out egregious terms. Mother must not only give up primary custody, but must have visitation with a supervisor and pay child support and attorney fees. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 15. The Bluffing Landlord Lawsuit. One of my buddies goes to Australia for 9 months. When he gets back, he comes home to a bunch of voicemails. Turns out the property company is coming after us for like $5,000 on top of the deposit. They tried to pressure him into either paying the money or he would be taken to court. He told them he would see them in court. For the couple months leading up to the court date, he would get calls telling him to pay, and it would all go away. The day before the first day of court, they call him and tell him to pay $2,000 and give them info for one of the other people on the original lease. He says, go to hell and see you in court. The first day of court is just to make sure everyone shows and to schedule the actual case. The lawyer for the property company shows up, is scrambling to figure out what is going on. Had no records beyond the original lease, which changed a few times as people moved in and out. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 16. The Altered Penalty in Consent Order. A coworker of mine was negotiating an order on consent, a legal document basically saying that you screwed up and here's how you're going to fix it, with a facility. The lawyers on both sides did their thing, and an agreement was reached. 2 days later, It comes back from the facility owner signed with several corrections throughout, including a significant reduction in the agreed-upon financial penalty. Apparently this gentleman was under the impression that our director wouldn't actually read the legal document he was about to sign, and as a result he would pull one over on us. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 17. The Arm Lift Demonstration Trap. My favorite is a story from Jerry Spence. For those who don't know, he is a famous trial attorney. A witness on the stand was claiming that he had suffered injuries to his arm because of a city bus accident. Jerry asked him to demonstrate to the jury how far he can lift up his arm after the accident. The witness makes a feeble effort of lifting his arm. Then Jerry asks the witness to demonstrate to the jury how far he could lift up his arm before the accident. He lifts his arm much higher. The jury laughs. The case is over. Story 18. The Delay and Sweetener Tactics. For misdemeanors, one of the most effective methods is to move the court date. Officers will often have several matters on the docket. If you put your case on a different day, when the officer has nothing, the officer is far less likely to show up. Delaying in general also helps the defense. Over months and years, officers and witnesses move on. Memories deteriorate. If you can get the prosecutor or officer to shout in frustration in open court, you are probably going to beat them. In lower courts, bringing sweets for the clerks never hurts. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 19. The Direct Contact Bypass Attempt. Yeah, in most states it's a violation of ethics rules to communicate with or send documents directly to the other side without going through their lawyer if you know they have one. That rule applies even if you aren't deliberately trying to trick someone, but the real reason it exists is to protect clients from stuff like this. Story 20. The Hidden No-Sue Clause. In one case that I worked on, a company had donated a bunch of money to various things in a small town that they were polluting, and the documents always had a clause basically saying, "and you can never sue us for anything." The people accepting the contracts just thought it meant anything related to this donation or whatever, but nope. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 21. Unmarked Lease Changes. Scummiest thing I ever saw another lawyer do. The company I work for was planning on leasing a fairly large parcel of undeveloped property. I was involved with the lease negotiations from the beginning, and they were taking quite a while. Basically, there were constant revisions to the lease. Finally, after about 8 months of negotiation, we appear to have an agreement. I send over a copy of the lease to the other company's attorney for final review, and their client's signature if acceptable. They send a signed copy back about a day later, indicating that the contract is acceptable. I do a final review before I send it up to the executive to sign. Since he didn't actually read these contracts, he just signed them after reading our summaries, and I noticed that there have been small but significant changes to the contract, all in the other company's favor. Unlike all of the prior revisions, which had been clearly marked, this guy just made changes without notifying us. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 22. Tenant Sneaks In Clause. So, as a regular person, I managed to sneak something into my current apartment lease. If I signed before a certain date, I forgot. Rent was like $50 a month cheaper, or $500 over the course of the 10-month lease. When I signed, I crossed out the before and wrote in after, and initialed it. I don't think they noticed because they signed it and gave me a copy. Story 23. Ex-wife's manipulative custody tactics. An ex-wife, a lawyer, represented herself in a nasty custody fight, repeatedly hauling the ex-husband back to court for more benefits. She took their manic-depressive child off meds before his custody turns, leading to child abuse allegations. She timed these allegations before holidays for maximum emotional damage, forged documents to overstate his income for alimony, and was sleeping with his lawyer, destroying his life, until her father exposed her actions to the judge. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 24. Wife's spiteful house sale sabotage. In a divorce, the wife lived in their house while it was for sale, agreeing to lower the price $1,000 monthly until sold, making payments to stay. She sabotaged sales by telling buyers the foundation was cracked, had termites, and neighbors were bad people, ensuring the house sold at the mortgage balance plus fees, giving up $10,000 to ensure the husband got nothing. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 25. Mother uses child for child support manipulation. A parent allowed their 15-year-old to drop out of school, get high daily, and buy substances and alcohol, just to win custody and receive child support from the other parent, avoiding paying $100 monthly. This manipulation included neglecting the child's well-being to exploit legal and financial benefits, boiling the blood of observers. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 26. Wife's deceptive restraining order. A wife filed for a restraining order to get the house during a divorce, leading to her husband's employer firing him due to the order. His specialized job meant he could only find work at $50,000, down from $200,000, causing foreclosure, reduced child support, and repossession of 4 cars. Her actions devastated their financial stability. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 27. Cheating wife's custody manipulation. A wife cheated, had a child, and let the husband believe it was his until age 5 during divorce. To stop him from getting custody, she convinced the biological father to fight for custody, creating a 3-way battle involving multiple grandparents, skyrocketing attorney fees, and ongoing court appearances, screwing herself in the process. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 28. Step-aunt's greedy estate lawsuit. After the grandfather died, the step-aunt, living off family money, sued the dad and uncle for their biological mother's estate, despite their disabilities and fixed incomes. In court, with the dad in a wheelchair and uncle with a cane, the judge denied her access, seeing her greed against their frail conditions, resolving in under an hour. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 29. Ex-wife's intoxication trap for driving while intoxicated, DWI. A woman, during a custody battle, got her soon-to-be ex-husband drunk, led him to his car, sat him in the driver's seat, and called the police, resulting in a driving while intoxicated charge. This led to him losing parental rights, using his intoxication against him in court to manipulate the outcome in her favor. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education. Story 30. False domestic violence accusations and recorded evidence. There are going to be accusations of domestic violence and/or sexual abuse. I was accused of domestic violence for owning vanilla air fresheners. She claimed the smell would give her a migraine. It was shot down in court, but still gave her the preferred treatment. Fast forward 6 trial dates later, closing arguments are next. I have her caught in some very big lies on the stand. I recorded every single encounter with her, used my phone and would only text. The one phone call she made was recorded as well. I'd be screwed if I didn't put in the effort. She might not get anything now. Attack their credibility with facts. Show how they antagonize and lie. A very big update is coming soon. Story 31. Ex-wife's false domestic violence claims and police involvement. My ex's domestic violence was, he spoke to me in a way I didn't like, and he stood in a doorway which led me to believe he was trapping me in the home. I was standing in the doorway of a room with 3 exits. We were having a discussion. Then she started recording, and immediately says, "Are you trapping me in this room?" To which I laughed, immediately moved, and pointed out the 2 other exits to the room. She stopped recording, deleted the video, and called the police, telling them the same story. Oh, and she changed from the sweats she was wearing into skimpy pajamas because she knew male police were on the way. Story 32. False protective order and child alienation. My soon-to-be ex-wife filed a false protective order to get me out of the house. No evidence, just statements saying that I am dying of cancer and that I will kill her and my daughter and live in fear daily. Luckily, I had camera evidence of her being violent towards me. As soon as her lawyer found out she was the violent one, she dropped the protective order because if the judge saw the evidence, she would be in trouble. I'm never going to forgive her, not only for making me waste thousands of dollars on a lawyer, but to take away 2 weeks of contact with my daughter. She did so much damage, including telling her lies as to why I was not coming home or calling my daughter. Now mom keeps abandoning her to spend special time with her international paramour. Story 33. Ex-wife's lies to social services and false accusations. At every point from social services, schools, the court, my soon-to-be ex-wife has lied to make herself look better and bring false accusations against me. At every point, these supposed professionals took her word for it, until I had 100% proof she was lying. Then she received no pushback or loss of credibility. She wouldn't help pay mortgage, so we got behind, then used that to say I was trying to make the kids homeless. I beat that in court and paid off everything. Then less than 12 hours later, she goes off with the same lies to my oldest therapist, who is a mandated reporter to Child Protective Services, CPS. The therapist doesn't even call me first, and reports just based on an insane call from my wife. Things like I was suicidal. I am not. Ultimately, Child Services investigates both of us, where I find out she has been slapping my 9-year-old son. Then I also get dinged for neglect for not keeping them safe from her. Just imagine there is no low or nothing they won't do to get an edge, or win whatever they want. Story 34. Settlement offer as a potential distraction trick. Long, unnecessarily contentious divorce, days from trial. The opposing counsel is 100% responsible for dragging this out and making it petty and expensive. It's a strategy that has worked well for her, and she has played from the Divorce Dirt Tricks handbook the whole time. We are days from a trial that was unlikely to go well for me, and in the past the opposing counsel has been unrelenting. She sent a settlement offer at the last minute, and the last days have been focused on finalizing the offer instead of preparing for trial. We have said, accepted with these modifications, and right now we're exchanging drafts of the final decree. Everything has been agreed to in email between me and my ex, but that wasn't through lawyers. Lawyers have a draft of the final decree. Early in the divorce, a friend told my ex to agree to whatever, and then, when he least expects it. Am I paranoid? Is this entire settlement offer a distraction to keep us from preparing for trial? Can they withdraw the offer last minute, leaving my lawyer with no time to write trial briefs? If it's possible, this opposing counsel would do it. Story 35. Last-minute withdrawal from agreed deal. You are right to be wary. Your divorce sounds much like mine. We had a deal for mine, and 2 days before the settle-up hearing where I hand our agreement to the judge, we tried to make a correction to the document that actually favored her. They came back the night before the hearing, called the correction a counteroffer, and walked out in the deal. It was at the end of the month, and she wanted another month of payments out of me. Nothing is done until the judge signs it.